Hello everybody and welcome to Forever Cricket on Forever Sports. And England versus India series in India has been wrapped up as India claimed the series 3-1 with an innings of 25-run victory in the fourth test, completely outplaying England once again. You know, on a pitch that was definitely better than the third test, which was created sort of a lot of controversy. But this pitch, you know, you can't really have too many complaints. Yes, it favors spin. It will always favor spin in India. At the end of the day, England batting just not good enough, and their spin just can't begin to compete with that of India's. And with this win, India have booked their place in the World Test Championship final against New Zealand, which will be played at Lord's, which will be an absolutely epic match to watch. Can't wait to sort of see that unfold. You know, New Zealand playing such good cricket at the moment. You know, Kane Williamson scoring runs for fun. You know, Virat Kohli is sort of struggling in the runs department. You know, so a big captain's duel there. You know, you've got the sort of the very good seam attack of New Zealand. The spinners of India, decent seamers for India as well. You know, the likes of Bumrah, Ishant Sharma getting better with age. It's a very different Indian side to what we're used to. You know, they really are a much sort of more well-rounded side. And if you look at this test match, it really does demonstrate the depth. Literally just the depth that India have, because England, you know, a first innings score of 205 it's below par. You know, they were saying it was probably a better deck than that, but they had India in all sorts of trouble. You know, you look at India, and only Rohit Sharma actually performed in the top order. You know, Shubman Gill got a 0, Pujara got 17, Virat Kohli got another duck. He pretty much underperformed the entire series. We'll get onto that when we look at the leading run scorers. Ajinkya Rahane didn't really come off, but for an absolute masterclass of Rishabh Pant, once again demonstrating how destructive a batsman he can be. And that is what we need people like Quinton de Kock to do for South Africa. You know, to be in that sort of number 6 and number 7 position and play counter-attacking cricket, you know, where you can take the game and, you know, take the pressure and put it back on the side, you know, because India were being pinned back. You know, some brilliant bowling by Jimmy Anderson, you know, as the only out-and-out seamer that was picked in the entire English side, you know, to try to sort of stack their batting. He went out there and did a fantastic job. But we then saw a brilliant innings by Washington Sundar, who actually was left unbeaten on 96 with 174. And then he was brilliantly backed up by Axar Patel, who finished on 43. And it was that partnership which completely took the game away from England before England, you know, collapsed to 135 on today, you know, with the only runs really to talk about is Dan Lawrence and Joe Root. And I know Dan Lawrence is probably about the only sort of shining light for the Indian batting attack throughout the test. You know, at 46 in the first innings, at 50 in the second innings, he looked a lot better than a lot of the England lineup. But, you know, I think it's a test series where India just outplayed England. England obviously started off with a bang. You know, that test in Chennai, you know, woke India up. And, you know, it was a brilliant interview by Ravi Shastri, who was saying that, you know, he didn't want to make excuses to go outplay in the first game, but they were a little bit tired. But he said it was exactly what they needed because it woke the Indians up. And they suddenly realized, and Virat Kohli spoke about this in his post-match, that you cannot just not work hard because you're at home. You cannot think that, you know, because before coming into the series, India were 12 test series unbeaten at home, you know, that they don't have to pitch up and work hard. He says you have to work as hard at home series as away series. You know, it won't just fall on your plate. He says when you play against international opposition, you will be playing against quality players. And we saw it with the brilliance of Joe Root in the first test with his 200. Since then, however, India played some very good cricket. And I think it's been a series which, apart from the third test, which is over in 2 days, you know, the pink ball, a pitch to which people are saying wasn't good enough, you know, a very controversial match. But even apart from that, I think, you know, England had their moments where they could have, if they had applied themselves a little better, got themselves into the test. But the biggest thing for me is you've got to look at the English spin department. And Jack Leach, you know, did his job, you know, took some wickets across the series, was a lot better, but Dom Bess just wasn't good enough. And I think that's the problem, is that you look at the leading wicket takers across the series, and, you know, it was between Ashwin and Axar Patel, they took over 50 wickets. 50 wickets between two bowlers, you know, whereas you look at Dom Bess, he managed just 5 wickets the entire tour. And you know, Jack Leach managed 18, so it wasn't quite doing what Ashwin and Patel were doing, but he needs to be backed up by Dom Bess. And that kind of just showed that in the spin department, England will always struggle. Same as when South Africa went over there. Same as, you know, in Australia go over there. You've got to have a good spin lineup for the subcontinent. You will not win in India without good spinners, you know, or else you have to have seamers who really know how to extract the best out of the pitch. You know, we saw how Jimmy Anderson could still do a lot in India. You know, we've seen over the years how Dale Steyn was as destructive in India as he was in South Africa, and that's what made South Africa so good in India, because they had a seamer who despite not necessarily being seen with any conditions, knew how to exploit the best conditions. But if you look at the series as well as overall and the top performers, Ravi Ashwin, what a performance by him. Player of the series, scored a ton. But if you look at his bowling stats, he took 32 wickets across 4 matches, an average of 14.71, an economy of 2.5, a strike rate of 35. And he was perfectly backed up by Axar Patel, who only played 3 tests. And he took 27 wickets with an average of 10.59 and an economy of 2.24, a best for 6 of 38, and a best match figures of 11 for 70. I mean, he was brilliant and contributed with the bat. And that was the big thing for India, is that, Washington Sundar, Axar Patel, Ravi Ashwin, all chipping in with the bat, because the Indian top order was relatively poor. I think Rohit Sharma was about the only sort of top order batsman who really came through in the run scoring department. So it was very disappointing. I mean, both sort of teams' top order kind of failed, and came down to what the middle order could do. With some aggressive and more sort of stroke play and stuff like that, and being willing to take a few risks, being positive. That kind of sort of seemed to work. So if you look at the most runs in the series, Joe Root was the leading top run scorer with 378. However, almost all of the runs came out of that one innings of 218 in the first test. So if you think of after the 218 to make 150 across 7 other innings is not really good enough. So he finished at an average of 46, and he also took a 5-for, so you won't get to sit there calling it out. But the problem is, when Joe Root doesn't perform, England can't perform. Ben Stokes was the next leading run scorer for England with 203 and an average of 25. After that was Ollie Pope, who made 153 runs and an average of 19. And that's the issue. You cannot win matches where you're third, where you've got your top order and your big batsmen like Ollie Pope averaging 19, Sibley averaging 16, Zach Crawley averaging 16. It's Rory Burns playing 2 matches averaging 14. That is where the issue lies. There just wasn't enough runs being scored. I mean, you look at something like Rishabh Pant, he averaged 54, scored 270 runs. Strike rate at 84, proper counter-attacking batting, it was class. Ravi Ashwin scored 189 runs across the series. Washington Sundar, 181 runs. Virat Kohli, 172 runs, despite not being particularly good. Averages of 28, but far below his standards. Still a lot better than a lot of the England top order. And that was where the issues lie. Rohit Sharma was the only sort of shining light in the top order. He scored 345 runs and an average of 57. Looks a completely different player at the moment. So, there'll be aspects to work on for India, and that's what Ravi Ashwin was saying. He was just saying that, they played well and they really deserved it, but they've still got a lot of work to do. For England, you've got to look at their batting and think that their batting needs to do better, and they need to bring in a better spinner. They can't compete. I mean, literally, the fact that they had to pick one out-and-out seamer to try and lengthen the batting order and still collapse shows you how out of depth they are at playing these conditions. And I think, you can point to the pitch in the third test, but I think this pitch, same thing as when any sort of country goes there. When India makes 365 runs, when your number 7 and 8 and 9 are making 96 and 43, it shows you that the pitch can't be that bad. It cannot be that bad, or else England's bowling attack was that bad. And I think a bowling attack which has Jimmy Anderson, Jack Leach, Ben Stokes, the problem is they just didn't have the spin. They just didn't have the spin to compete with India. And then they couldn't bat on that. So just completely outplayed across the series, apart from the first test. And what we're going to see is a very, very interesting clash in the World Test Championship final against New Zealand. But let me know what you thought of the series down in the comments below. They move towards a T20 and an ODI series, which we played at Ahmedabad and in Pune over the next few weeks. So lots of cricket over there in the subcontinent. We've got cricket, international cricket happening between New Zealand and Australia as well. We've got West Indies, Sri Lanka currently happening. South Africa preparing to host Pakistan in April. We had Zimbabwe playing against Afghanistan. We're going to be talking about all of this in the launch of our new podcast, the Balesville podcast, which will hopefully debut next week. So make sure you keep it locked on for sports so that you're up to date with that. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Stephen, and I'll chat to you soon.